Hello, and this is the Warpforge with a special Batman series, gaming series. I'm going to call this the Arkham Files, and the Arkham Files are going to be a tactica on free agents and various leaders for various gangs. So the first Arkham Rogue I want to talk about, or do a tactica about, is Mr. Freeze, because I find Mr. Freeze is going to be the best in general free agent to talk about first, because he can go into every gang, which I'll explain into this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about his equipment, then his personal special rules, then his stats, and then tell you how I would usually play him. So, Mr. Freeze is a free agent. He is affiliate unknown and he doesn't hate anyone. So he can be in all the villainous gangs, and he can also be in the Law Gang, he can be in the Green Arrow Gang, and he can be in the Batman Gang. So already he is an option for every gang basically, because as far as I know, no one hates him and he doesn't hate anyone. This variation of Mr. Freeze is Arkham City. His equipment is a refrigeration gun, which does 2 blood damage, rate fire 2, ammo 3, and his special rules for his gun is mechanic, medium distance, and critical freeze. So I'll go into the rules of the gun. Mechanic means that he damages on 3 up, so he damages enemies on a 3+, and it's a good little way of getting past bulletproof vests, since it's not a firearm. So that's good. Medium distance is 40 centimeters. However, because Batman's usually played at night, it'll be 30 centimeters range, which is still quite good on a 3x3 board. But it gets even better when your target's under the effect of light of 10 centimeters. He would also be good with Gordon, but I'll talk about that later. He has critical freeze, which basically means on the critical damage dice, if he rolls a 6 and you've got at least 1 damage through, then that person is paralysed, which means they can't do anything with that guy. He's basically like knocked out without being knocked out, and he does -2 to his defence. So that's really, really harsh against low model count gangs such as League of Shadows and Court of Owls. He has freezing grenades, which do 1 blood damage, rate fire 1, ammo 2, and the special rules are mechanic, short ranged, explosive, and critical freeze. Mechanic, I've already explained, it's a brilliant way of getting past all the firearm bulletproof vests. His short range is 20 centimeters. Explosive basically uses, and I'll pause here, he uses that template for the freeze grenade, which is great. It is very, 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 very good against lots of members of gangs and stuff like that. It's a good way of clearing them out. We'll go back. So already that's the explosive template. It's like grenade, it goes bang. And critical freeze, again, so anybody under that template, if you damage them, at least get 1 damage through, and you score 6 of the critical damage dice, they are frozen, which is paralysed, which means they can't do anything, and they're also -2 defence. So that's really, really good. I mean, I'll go through a little experience where I had Mr. Freeze on a board, and Swamp Thing has come towards us, so I threw a freeze grenade and I actually froze Swamp Thing, and that was absolutely great. Because it was one of those things that it happened out of nowhere. He just popped out of nowhere, and I was like, right, I've got to deal with him. Lady Luck was on my side, and it was just really funny, if I'm honest. Just freezing this big, massive, creature from the Black Lagoon. Absolutely great. But, yeah, it's also a good way of clearing out lots of low rep amount of henchmen. It's nice just to throw the freeze grenade, freeze guys in the place, ready for, maybe an assault riflesman just to open fire on them all and kill them all. So that's basically the freeze grenade. Personal traits, which is a special rules. He's scientific, which gives him special of 4 instead of 3. However, if he is removed as a casualty, then he awards an additional victory point to your opponent's gang. He is scheming 2, which basically means that when you're raising the plan, you can keep 2 guys back to rearrange counters, watch your opponent to rearrange his counters, and then rearrange the counters that of the guys you've kept back, which is good for when you're wanting to plan ahead and you want to see what your opponent's specifically doing. It's a rule that seems a bit hard to get into, and you can see it sort of, but when you actually play the game, if you get scheming too, it really, really, really helps. He also has insensitive, which means he doesn't lose willpower points for damage, which is absolutely great because that means that he won't be stopped. He is a tank. And he has primary target loot, which basically means that if he controls the objective specified, which is loot, so that's like cash and stuff, then he gains an additional victory point. So instead of a loot being 1 victory point, it'd be 2 victory points if he's controlling it. He also has his special trait, which is power armor, which is this is what makes Mr. Freeze a tank. Power armor, it basically ignores the first 3 damage markers received by Mr. Freeze, and after that the damage then goes on. Once it's gone, however, so you can't do it again until during the recovery roll. What you can also do there is you can spend 2 special counters to reactivate the power armor, which basically means that you can basically get the power armor force field back, but you're going to have to pay counters for it. His reputation cost is $75, and his funding is $500. So rep-wise he's not too bad, but funding's very expensive. That's all I can really say about that. So we'll go to his stats. His willpower is 6, so that's quite average for a free agent. His strength is 4 up, so already he's decent enough. He's got a 50-50 chance of hurting other opponents and stuff. He is slow with standard movement of 2. He has 4 attack, which is good, in my opinion. His defense 3, which is on par with most like henchmen. He has endurance 6, and his specials 3 stat wise, but because of scientific it's 4. So what would Mr. Freeze stat wise say? He's very much on the offense and he can take a lot in. What you've got to remember is that with endurance it's standard for a free agent, but because of his power armor, what I tend to usually like to think of in my mind is say that he's endurance 9 instead, because of the power armor. It's basically given 3 points of endurance free of charge without taking any damage or any effects of damage from it. So that's what I like. There is a major weakness to Mr. Freeze, which I'll go on in a bit. We'll talk about his strengths. That gun, his refrigeration gun as I like to call it, is 4 blood damage potentially, and you get freeze someone. That's great. That can kill off, with both rate of fire, that can kill off a guy. That can kill off a low rep count henchman. That's very good. Very nice. He's good at clearing out henchmen, and he's good at making sure any specifics like sidekicks or other free agents, or even maybe leaders at times, but leaders are kind of pushing it a little bit, only because leaders do a lot in return, make them stand still with the crit result of freeze. What else can I say about him? He is a massive threat range. You put him on the board, you fly him up turn 1 or turn 2, and he has got 30 centimeter threat range, technically 4 if your opponent's under the effect of light. That's absolutely great. That is better than okay. So what is his drawbacks? Well, he's got the major one. He's Mr. Freeze. You kind of guess where I'm going with this. So it's part of his power armor ability. It is vulnerable to fire, so each fire marker received causes damage of 2 blood, and that's really harsh, because that can basically, if your opponent has someone with fire, he's going to target Mr. Freeze first. This is a case of who shoots who and who gets to freeze or set alight first, because it's really, really punishing on Mr. Freeze. But then you'd expect it because, you know, fire is his #1 biggest weakness. He's quite expensive on funding as well. His gun and his tech is spot on. It's brilliant, but you are paying for it. I mean, Mr. Freeze, as far as I know, is one of the most expensive free agents funding-wise. So if you're picking Mr. Freeze, if you're wanting a low model count band, don't expect to have many elite goons. For example, if you're playing Court of Owls or Gordon for the SWAT, don't expect to have many SWAT members or many court members, because Freeze will just soak up that funding cost. He's slow as well, and that kind of contradicts his primary target loot ability, because with the loot, you're getting 2 victory points a turn. That's as much as a Titan canister, except you can move the loot counter around with Mr. Freeze, so it's technically better if you have Mr. Freeze with the loot. But he is slow. He is standard movement 2, and he wants to be firing at your enemy's gang. You want that full rate of fire. If you don't have that full rate of fire, you're praying for a crit result, which doesn't always happen. It's not the best way to get results. So again, it's one of those things where, how you're going to do it, if you're taking Mr. Freeze, you're going to have to find someone with a very fast movement value, or at least fast rules, so that they dodge incoming ranged attacks. Just make sure you have a fast character or fast cheap goon, like from the Arkham Looney set. I know there's a guy with 3 movement, and I think there might be one from the Blackgate Prisoners set who has 3 movement as well. Just basically surge him towards the loot, get the loot, bring it towards Freeze, pass it to Freeze. Freeze takes it, and you've got 2 victory points a turn. But that also costs a lot of rep. For example, you've got 75 plus how many ever for the henchman for that one tactic to work. So you are going to have to plan a lot. If you're taking Mr. Freeze, you're going to have to plan a lot around Mr. Freeze as well as your own gang, because of how slow he is with movement of 2. You're going to want to most definitely plan around, and if you do plan around him, it'll pay off, most guaranteed. If you do manage to strike a balance between your own gang and Mr. Freeze here, it will pay off when you start getting 2 victory points a turn from that loot. Other than that, I can't really say much else. I would say he works best with various gangs. Some of the gangs I'll say he doesn't particularly work well with would be Joker's gang, because Joker's he's got his own goons, and he's very synergetic with his own goons because of all the distract and stuff, and all bonuses he gives off, including Trickster and stuff. So stuff like Scheming 2 can be negated by the Trickster trait Joker produces. But there's going to be other gangs like Black Mask, who would love Freeze. Penguin would also love Freeze, even though they do have like a habit of not liking each other. The synergy-wise, Penguin and Mr. Freeze really like each other because of the Lord of Business ability. Just means that it counteracts his heavy funding cost, which is great. He also works quite well with Gordon and the Law, mainly because of his abilities with the refrigeration gun and Gordon's spotlight ability, where he brings in a helicopter and it puts a searchlight on a few goons with the template that I've shown you with the freeze grenade. So that basically means he can get a 40cm shot on a 3x3 board. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Can't recommend that enough. But aside from that, that would be Mr. Freeze, because he is a tank at the end of the day. And I love the fact that Knights models have made him a tank, because he's one of my favourite superheroes from the whole, well, anti-heroes from the whole superhero genre. He's one of my favourite characters anyway. If not, he's my favourite character, so I'm very biased. But as far as I know, he's a tank. Just, if the main thing I want to say before I leave you all, is if you see fire, or if you see a guy or a henchman or a free agent like Firefly with fire, shoot them down first. Doesn't have to be Mr. Freeze, but make sure you shoot them down first, because fire's an amazing ability. It's really, really punishing on yours and your opponent's team. In addition, fire really, really punishes Mr. Freeze. So if you see someone like Firefly or a henchman with the fire effect, make sure they're dead first, within the first 3 turns, because you don't want them coming up close and personal and setting Mr. Freeze alight. You don't want that at all. So, with that, that is the tactica done. This is if you like what you see and you want to see more of these Arkham files, then please give it a like. If there's anything you want to talk about Mr. Freeze, tactics-wise, in the comments section, please comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you run Mr. Freeze as well. We're all ice buddies after all. So, yeah. This is the Warpforge, signing out. And remember, keep on forging.